Hello and welcome to my Yu-Gi-Oh channel. So today we're looking at some cards which are coming out of main box 32, Photons of Galaxy, and we're going to be looking at the new cards. These are normal cards, so they're really easy to find. You'll get so many of these cards. As a quick reminder, please make sure to subscribe for more daily Yu-Gi-Oh content. The first one is Twin Photon Lizard. It's a light attribute dragon type fusion monster. It's a level 6 with 2400 attack and 1000 defense. It requires just 2 photon monsters. You contribute this card to special summon from the graveyard both of the fusion material monsters used for the fusion summon of this card. So essentially what you're trying to do is you're ripping the card apart to be able to go into your Xyz monsters, or you could always go into the Photon Galaxy Eyes Dragon if you want to. Either condition is fine. It's quite versatile, and for a fusion monster, it's okay for the stat lineup. You're most likely just going to be using it for its effect to rip itself apart. This was used by Kite within the first time he dueled Yuma, I think it was like episode 13, and it was used, I think he fused 2 of his Photon Lizards, which ironically also search for monsters, so the two are kind of linked together. Photon Saber Tiger is a light attribute beast type level 3 with 2000 attack and 300 defense. When this card is normal or flip summoned, you can add 1 Photon Saber Tiger from your deck to your hand. If you do not control another Photon Saber Tiger, this card loses 800 attack. So unlike most of the Photon monsters that have beneficial effects, this actually has a detrimental one. It has a good attack stat which is necessary to bring out Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon, but remember you need 2 of these cards to keep its attack. Otherwise, if it doesn't have its friend long, then you're going to have a 1200 attack monster. It being a level 3 means it's going to only go into rank 3, and there aren't too many of those around, at least none that are particularly that powerful at the moment. Photon Circle is a light attribute spellcaster type level 4 with 1000 attack and 1000 defense. Any battle damage you take from battles involving this card are halved. Okay, unlike most of the Photon monsters, this doesn't have an effect which lets it become a 2000 monster, so that means it's not going to be used for summoning Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon, but the ability to halve any damage involved with it is fine. It's better, obviously, if you're attacking into defense position monsters, because you can then continue to use this effect, but it's a effect which is used to kind of preserve yourself rather than offensive effect. It was used against Astral by Kite when they were in the and he was trying to take Astral's numbers. In the end, Astral was able to do a lot of damage and brought out Utopia, but through, I think it was using C number 39, he was able to use the effect, but because the amount of damage that was halved, he wasn't able to finish Kite within the same turn. Photon Leo is a light attribute beast type level 6 with 2100 attack and 1100 defense. Its effect is when this card is normal summoned, you can have your opponent shuffle their entire hand into the deck, then they draw the same number of cards as they shuffled into the deck. This, I think, is one of the only higher level monsters that you'll see within the game. It's one of the only ones that summoned with having to have a normal summon to use its effect. The others, I think, have some kind of special summon to mitigate that downside. This effect is quite useful if your opponent's been trying to search through things and use resources to get specific types of hands, but otherwise I do think it's quite slow. You know, this does rely on you tribute summoning it on your turn, unless you can use something like Monarch Storm's 4th, which is a bit bizarre why you actually run that within the Photon deck to tribute during your opponent's turn. It's not that viable. It's just one of the weak ones. I wouldn't even consider it using it within the deck. Photon Caesar is a light attribute warrior type level 8 with 2000 attack and 2800 defense. When this card is normal or flip summoned, you can special summon 1 Photon Caesar from your hand or deck. Okay, this is one of those other annoying ones that does require almost tribute summons to use their effects because it's a normal summon requirement, but the good thing is you're bringing out another Photon Caesar, which means you can actually go into Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon. Yes, it's a lot more difficult to do than lots of the other strategies, but it's actually, when time turns out, it's used more for the rank 8 Xyz plays. He's got number 62 out there, and there's some other rank 8 monsters you can obviously make just by summoning this card. Photon Pirate is a light attribute machine type level 3 with 1000 attack and 1000 defense. You can banish one Photon monster from your graveyard. This card gains 1000 attack until the end phase. You can only use the effect of Photon Pirate up to twice per turn. So this is really good in that it can become a 3000 attack monster, which is unusual. Most of them only let you double the attack, so it goes from 1000 to 2000. This lets you to triple at the attack, so you can at worst be able to get rid of some of your opponent's stronger monsters. The disadvantages: you are banishing your Photon monsters, so if you aren't able to recover them, got no specific recovery for banished cards, then you lose those cards for the rest of the duel. It's a decent effect and one that is quite useful, but again, it being a level 3 means you're adding it to a pool of rank 3 Xyz monsters that are not that great. Ostrich Warwolf is a dark attribute zombie type level 3 with 1400 attack and 1500 defense. It cannot be normal summoned unless you control a Ghost Trick monster. Once per turn, you can change this card to face down defense position. When this card is flipped face up, inflict 100 damage to your opponent for each set card on the field. You can only use this effect of Ghost Trick Warwolf once per turn. Okay, so with the idea of how the Ghost Tricks work, the level 3s have a tendency to do burn effect damage. Remember, with how the Duel Links works, it's only going to be 50 life point damage for each set card, so it's on the field. You could potentially have, 12 cards. That's if you're being generous. That's not likely to happen. You're not likely to be doing 600 points of damage. You're more likely to be doing maybe 100 or 150 points of damage. At that point, it's not strong enough to be justified, and it's probably one of the stronger ones out there, but it's just not an effect that you want to rely on too heavily. Light Serpent is a light attribute reptile type level 3 with 1200 attack and 800 defense. If this card is sent from the hand to the graveyard, you can special summon it from the graveyard. This card cannot be used as a synchro material monster. This is used basically for another Xyz play into a rank 3 Xyz monster. As Xyz monsters at the moment, rank 3s aren't that great, so you're going to have to wait a little bit longer before this effect is actually even useful. The good side of it is, if it's sent from the hand to the graveyard, you get to just bring it out. That's brilliant if you have to use certain types of costs, such as Tribute to the Doomed, or Raigeki Break, or anything else that requires a discard cost. Overlay Sentinel is a light attribute warrior type level 4 with 2000 attack and 0 defense. Cannot be special summoned. When this card is normal summoned, change this card to defense position. If you control a face-up Xyz monster that has Xyz material, you can banish this card from your graveyard and target one monster your opponent controls. It loses 500 attack for each Xyz material attached to a monster you control. This is just generic Xyz support, so the more material you have, the more attack points you can remove from your opponent's monster. It's a decent enough effect, but it does eat up your normal summon, and for a 2000 attack monster, the effect isn't that impressive. There's another one called Overlay Booster, which has the same kind of effect, but it actually increases your Xyz monster's attack points by its materials, but it's not within this set. That's something I'm quite curious about, why it hasn't been introduced. Kraken is a fire attribute aqua type level 4 with 1600 attack and 1500 defense. It's a squid that thrives on fire and heat. It being a normal monster is okay, and it's just one of those pack fillers. There isn't much to say about it. Galaxy Wave is a continuous spell card with the effect each time you Xyz summon, inflict 500 damage to your opponent. With this effect, it's actually half to 250, but I doubt you're going to be Xyz summoning that often until we get a lot of these spamming Xyz monsters, usually the ones from the Utopia line. It's not likely we're going to be able to use that effect that often. It's not a card that you're going to want to rely too heavily on. Luminous Dragon Ritual is a ritual spell card with the effect this card is used to ritual summon a Paladin of Photon Dragon. You must also tribute monsters from your hand or field whose total levels equal exactly 4. You can banish this card from your graveyard, banish monsters from your graveyard whose total levels equal exactly 4, and special summon one Paladin of Photon Dragon from your hand after that. This special summon is treated as a ritual summon. So essentially with this card you can use its ritual effect twice over. It's quite useful to be able to only have to run one of them rather than multiple, as you could end up drawing too many. You could break your hand. You could end up with potentially 2 of the ritual monster, 2 of this ritual spell as well, which is a common problem of some of the older forms of ritual monsters and ritual spells. This being a little bit more advanced, I'd say this is mid-level advanced, it's not the best. It means that it has double utility, which is something that the ritual spells need to have these days to be at least semi-viable. Overlay Capture is a normal spell card with the effect target one face-up Xyz monster your opponent controls that has Xyz material and one face-up Xyz monster you control. Detach all Xyz materials from the opponent's monster, and if you do, attach this card to your monster as an Xyz material. This tries to remove your opponent's materials. It's quite decent because if they have various effects that disrupt you, that's a good idea. It is very conditional because you do need to have an Xyz monster of your own, but it's nice that you're able to then use this to help support your Xyz monster. Photon Cerberus is a light attribute beast type level 3 with 1300 attack and 600 defense. The effect: during the turn this card was normal summoned, neither player can activate trap cards while this card is face up on the field. I love the design of this card, I think the effect is really good. Yes, it's only for the turn it's summoned, but that can actually be enough if you can get some of your stronger monsters out, and I love the fact that it just shuts down traps for the rest of the turn. In certain cases like Ostrich Warwolf or with Mirage Dragon, it's only during the battle phase. By being responsive for the whole turn, this can put you in a point where you're not having to deal with Drowning Mirror Force, or you've got all of these disruptive cards which prevent you from doing anything, or put you in a situation where your opponent then ends up winning. Morpho Butterfly is a dark attribute warrior type level 4 with 1200 attack and 1600 defense. Once per turn, when the battle position of an opponent's monster is changed, except during the battle damage step, you can target one of those monsters. It loses 1000 attack and defense. So again, this with the Butterfly archetype is part of the support, which helps to reduce your opponent's stat lineup every time their battle position is changed. Blade Bouncer is an Earth Attribute Warrior type level 4 with 1800 attack and 1400 defense. The effect: once per turn, if this card attacks and your opponent controls a monster, at the end of the damage step, you can discard one card. This card can attack opponent's monster once again during this battle phase. What's good about this card is it can help to clear your opponent's board, so if they've got a couple of monsters on the field or they have an effect which summons another monster to the field, it helps to get rid of those cards. The problem is you are having to discard to use this effect, whereas there are some monsters that have this effect without needing to discard or pay any costs. 1800 attack is decent for a level 4, and at the worst case, even if you don't use the effect, it's pretty decent to go into a rank 4 Xyz monster. Phantom Bowser is a dark attribute warrior type level 6 with 2400 attack and 1200 defense. The effect: if this card on the field is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can add 2 Bowser cards from your deck to your hand. So this card is actually quite necessary because you think of the Photon Bouncer, Strike Bouncer, that is a rank 6, so you need level 6 monsters within the deck itself. It's only made of about 4 cards, the archetype, 4 or 5 cards, the archetype. That includes the boss monster. It includes a monster I think called Hammer Bouncer, which summons itself instantly as a level 6 monster if you don't have the other monsters on your field, and your opponent does. And this helps to this card obviously helps to search out for your Bouncer monsters. I wish they actually upgraded the archetype, because when Nistro was playing the Bouncer archetype, that was very early on, and eventually they just removed the archetype that he used. He ended up going with the Heroic Challengers, so this never actually received any more support beyond its initial release. And the final card is a Fate Plan. This is a normal trap card with the effect a player cannot attack face down monsters during this turn. So it acts like a negate attack specifically against your monsters. It's decent, but it's very situational. I would advise using it only in decks that rely on you playing very defensively, such as Subterrors. It's a very old card as well, which explains why its effect is not usable these days, and why it's been thrown and overshadowed by so many other cards.